Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States. But do you know the warning signs women are having a heart attack are often very different than for men? Today, we'll meet a heart attack survivor who nearly died after ignoring the warning signs. Now she's on a mission to keep other women from ignoring those signs too. That's all up next on Still Time for Joy, where we share practical advice for weathering life's storms and inspiring stories of resilience. Hello, I'm Sandra Levine, host of Still Time for Joy. My guest today is Susan Smith, author, advocate for women's heart health, and friend. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So before we get into your story, it's so important for women to know the warning signs of a heart attack. So I want to get right into that. What are those 6 or 7 warning signs?
I have to tell you, these signs are always a surprise to the women that I talk to. Number 1 is fatigue. And I'm not talking about you're being out of breath after running a mile. It is the bone tired feeling that you have to lay down. You are totally fatigued. Shortness of breath, lightheadedness or dizziness, any discomfort. I'm not going to say the word pain. I'm talking discomfort in your upper body, which starts at your jaw down to your rib cage. That's a lot of territory in a woman. So it can be in your arm, your shoulder, your chest, your neck, your collarbone. That's where I had mine. Women say they have a backache, a neck ache, a toothache, but it's some discomfort, it's pressure, it's squeezing, and it can become painful, but it often begins as just some discomfort that you're likely to ignore. There's oftentimes sweating, like a cold sweat, like a menopausal sweat, and a lot of times a feeling of anxiety. A lot of times women have it, they consider indigestion, but that's still in your upper body right down there at the bottom of your sternum. And that's a sign where that gets painful. What I want to tell women that these symptoms are not like the ones that we knew of men having heart attacks.
Women should pay attention when they're having these signs and not ignore them, obviously. But tell us your story. What happened? What were you doing the day of your heart attack? And did you have any of these signs or all of these signs?
Oh, Sandy, I had all of them. And because I didn't know what the warning signs are for heart attack in women, I ignored them all. And I'll tell you why I didn't know them. Because in my mind, a heart attack is what a man has. I've seen it in the movies or read it in a novel. He gets sweat on his forehead. He has pain running down his arm. He clutches his chest and he falls to the floor. And if they save him, they save him. I had none of those signs, none. So I was preparing to give a talk. I was having shortness of breath, but I couldn't figure out why. I was lightheaded and I couldn't figure out why. And I was so tired and I couldn't figure out why. And I just thought, oh, I'm having nerves because I'm giving a presentation. Once I got into the room and was giving my talk, I began to have heart palpitations. I had sweat on my forehead. I was having all these symptoms. And the girl next to me, she said, I'm going to call 911. I said, no, I'm fine. I stood up too long. I didn't eat my lunch. You know, women have 100 excuses for everything. So I had them all that day. I finished my presentation. I sat down, had lots of water. I got my composure back. I couldn't drive. My husband came and picked me up. I mean, everyone in the room thought, this woman is crazy for not going to the ER. But you know why I didn't go to the ER? Because I had too much to do. On that particular day, I had to finish that meeting, and I was supposed to get ready for a class the next day, and I just thought, I don't have time to go. And that's a terrible excuse. We should never do that.
So you made a phone call to your doctor's office, and what did they say to you about not having enough time, that you had too much to do? What did they tell you?
And the nurse in the office, She said, well, it sounds like with your symptoms, you should go to your cardiologist or go to the emergency room. And I just lost it. I said, I can't go to the emergency room. I have too much to do. And she said to me, you can't do anything if you're dead. So I called my cardiologist. I had one. And he found my file that was 10 years old. I hadn't been there in ages. And they worked me in, and I went to his office. They put me on the EKG, and he comes in and he says, Susan, you're having a heart attack right now. You have to go to the emergency room now. So I was there in 2 minutes. They put me on a gurney, got me to the cath lab, gave me 2 stents. Oh my gosh. It was the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life.
And that was in 2018. And you told me that you had an artery that was completely blocked. Now, you could have died, right?
Yes. And that's how serious this is. Had I known about these symptoms, I would have taken them more seriously. But I didn't know. And all of those symptoms have to do with the heart's ability to pump that oxygen-rich blood into every cell of your body. All your organs need that oxygen. And so these signs that I just told you about are because the heart is having trouble pumping.
Mm-hmm. What did you think when the whole immediate crisis was over, the next day or the day after? What were you thinking when you found out that you had all these blocked arteries and you had such a serious condition? Were you shocked?
I was shocked. I was in the hospital 4 days because I had another heart attack in the hospital and had to repair another stent, another artery. And I couldn't believe it was happening to me. And of course it did. And so then I was shocked that I almost died. I was extremely grateful that I had lived. And I was frightened that I had let it get that bad. And yet I still couldn't understand how that could have happened to me. I mean, I consider myself healthy. I'm slim. I exercise. I think I eat right. But heart disease knows no boundaries in age, size, shape. Any woman, any man. Actually, heart disease is the #1 killer of men and women.
Talk to me a little bit about your life, your lifestyle. I know that you were you had a full plate leading up to this.
I did.
It was stress a part, do you think, of what led you to have heart disease?
Yes, I've done enough research to learn that the life I was living was stressful. The life I was living was a lot of fun, and I was doing many things in one day. I was on every board and every committee, and I belonged to a lot of clubs, and I loved my busy life, and I was going from one thing to another. And if somebody needed me to help them out, do something, I'd say sure. And I know now I was doing too many things without enough time. So they call that eustress, EUSTRESS, and it's the definition for good stress. So stress in your life doesn't always have to be something bad. It's as if you're planning a wedding for your daughter and you're excited, but it's stressful. Or you're going on vacation and you're planning that, and you're excited, but it's stressful. So I was living my days, day to day, being excited, and I was thriving on that level of the stress. It gave me a buzz. It gave me confidence. It gave me energy to go on and do the next thing. I could tackle any project. I could do anything. People would ask me to help them out. I'd say, well, let me help you do that. Let me just take this project on because you need me. And I loved it. I thrived on it. But that stress is what got to me.
And of course, our culture rewards us for our productivity, and busyness is often rewarded. So you were getting a lot done and feeling really good about it, but it obviously can cause problems in people. So tell me a little bit about your recovery from the heart attack. What did you have to do? How long did it take?
I spent months. I had to change everything about my life. I had to change my diet. I had to go to cardiac rehab 2-3 times a week. I stopped all of these activities that I told you about. At that time, I was running a small business, teaching writing and running groups and on social media, and I stopped all of that because I had to change my lifestyle. My doctor told me, he said, you have to take all your meds, you have to eat heart healthy, you have to go to cardiac rehab, and you have to eliminate all stress from your life. And I said, I can't do that because I like it, but I did. I had to give it up.
Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about the emotions that went along with the shock of having heart disease and not even knowing it, having a heart attack, nearly dying, and then needing to change so much about your life and your lifestyle. What were some of the emotions that you went through?
It was a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster. One day I would be filled with gratitude and just thanking God for saving my life. The next day I would be depressed and sad because I wasn't seeing my friends and my cohorts. And then the next day I would be filled with anxiety. I'd be worried, oh my gosh, this thing is aching again. What's happening? And the next day I would be sad. They call it survivor guilt because I had a friend die from breast cancer, and here I had lived through this heart attack. So I had all kinds of guilt and gratitude, but the main thing I had, and I had to discover this in counseling, was grief. And when I went for counseling, because I just couldn't snap out of this depression, she diagnosed me with grief. She said, you are grieving your old lifestyle, your healthy body, all the things that you used to have that you don't have anymore. And that is one of the most common emotions I see when I counsel other women after they have a heart attack.
So, how did your counselor help you work through that grief?
We worked long and hard about changing not just my lifestyle, but my mindset. And her number one instruction to me was to learn to say no. Well, I had said yes to everything my whole life. And as you said, we are rewarded for doing all the things and keeping busy, and we're rewarded for that. And so that was a mindset change for me, and it was hard. So I learned to say no, and then every sixth time somebody would ask me to do something, I'd start to say yes, I could do that. It's not too stressful. But you couldn't. You had to keep saying no. And I think that's one of the hardest things for us women to do, is to say no.
And what happens is your priorities change, right? How have your priorities changed because of this?
You learn that your family and your friends, Mother Nature, all the things that you have put off doing, reading a book, writing a book, just being and not doing. I have this mantra that I say, it's called just be. And my son told me, he said, Mom, do you think that you can just be and stop all this doing? And I thought about that, and I thought, we are human beings. We're not human doings. And every time I have a slip up, and it's been 6 years since my heart attack, and I still backslide. I don't know if anybody ever really fully regains the art of saying no. But if I can just be, and that means just being still, just enjoying the moment, enjoying your children. Doesn't matter how old they are.
So, one thing you did decide to put some energy towards was becoming an advocate for women and for heart health. And I want you to please tell me about your journey and about Women Heart and about the education that you went through in order to become a heart health advocate.
Oh, it was so wonderful. I must say that from the moment I woke up from the anesthetic and knew that I had stents and knew that I had almost died, I thought, I have to tell everybody I know. I have to tell the women I know what happened to me. And I want them to know, so I want to tell them, don't do what I did. And I just started talking about it and blogging about it. And I was approached by a nurse in cardiac rehab who told me about Women Heart. It's the national organization for women with or at risk of heart disease. And every year at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, they train about 50 women from all over the country in all things about heart disease and different types of procedures and different kinds of diseases and all the things that medication and all of it. It's 4 days of just cramming it in. And then they send you back to your community, and you can then do community outreach, which is speaking, writing, and doing public service, or starting a support group. And once I came back to my town here in Tucson, I did both. I started a support group, and I was always writing about this because it was so traumatic. But then every health fair we would be there, and anything out in the community where we could spread the word about women and heart disease. And the thing we tell them is the number one killer of women, and we tell them those symptoms. And if that's all we can tell one woman, then we've gotten our message across.
And as you mentioned earlier, you have been a writer your whole life. I read in your bio, I think, somewhere that at age 10, you were writing a family newsletter. And because of your experience, you did write a book called My Heart Attack Saved My Life, but for what? So, first of all, congratulations on writing your book. And I know what prompted you to write it, which was to help women to recognize the warning signs of a heart attack and to educate women and to save lives. So what was the experience like of writing the book, and what do you feel you have accomplished in writing the book? Has anybody told you somehow helped them to, look into their signs, for instance?
The beauty about writing a book that spreads the story, tells my story, and tells women about these symptoms so that they can know them, is that I hear back in a text or a note or an email or in a review on the Amazon that I'm helping save lives. I'm helping them. They say, I have this in my family, we have the genetics, and I'm going to get checked out tomorrow, thank you, that kind of thing. The other thing about the book, Sandy, is that I had written the first half of it immediately after my heart attack, because it's every detail of every minute of that thing. And it's meant to be kind of frightening when women read it and they go, oh gosh, this is scary. But then the but for what, which is the second half of the book, I really wanted to communicate how hard it is to change. And the more women I talk to who are not only heart attack survivors, but cancer survivors, they are grieving over a lost loved one. They have lost something and they have survived something, and they had to change their life. And we have this little band, or the big band, of how we know it's difficulties and we have to support each other as we live our lives. We are constantly told that after you survive cancer, heart attack, all the diseases, that you must now live a new normal. Mm-hmm. What the heck does that mean? Well, you can't just go out and say, okay, I want to start living a new normal. You have to change everything. And like I described, just that learning to say no, just learning to do things differently it's hard. So the last half of the book is the but for what, and it's about changing.
And I know some of the things that you enjoy now are nature, mindfulness, you practice, meditation, of course, spending time with family. It's common, I think, in people who have a near-death experience or a traumatic experience that they perceive the important things in life a little differently. What would you say are the most important couple of things that you learned from your experience, or what you're embracing more now that you may have not in the past?
I have to say the number one thing is my own mindfulness and how I care for others, especially my family. And we had a close family anyway, but I think when you almost die, when you have a near-death experience, like you say, and you survive, everyone in your circle, they become more important to you. You care about them so deeply. And I have to say that it has to do with your heart. And your heart's not just a pump. Your heart really is filled with love and helps you get to your emotions.
I read in your book that you spoke to your heart. And what did your heart tell you when you spoke to it? What questions were you asking your heart?
I asked my heart, and I tell you in the book how I learned to talk to my heart, was how do I get to this new normal? How can I do this? Why is it so hard? And my heart would just give me, not talking in my ear, but intuition of, why don't you go back and do this thing that you used to love to do, and this thing, and this thing.
Such as?
Such as planting flowers in my garden, sewing on my sewing machine, which had dust on it because I hadn't gotten it out in so long, creating a character in a novel, which I had set aside for 10 years. They were all creativity things. I learned from my heart that I really like being creative. And she urged me to go back and do these things. And now they're a hobby, or I know I can do it anytime and really feel good about it.
Yeah, because in our busyness, sometimes we lose connection with our authentic selves. And sometimes it does take something really traumatic, really to shake you up and reconnect you to your authentic self. So what would be the number one most important thing you feel you learned? Is it the just be, or what would you say?
Oh, I think you hit it there. The just be, and that ties into being my authentic self. And I'm 77. It took me that long to get here. I mean, I had led that life filled with busyness for my whole life.
You were in the corporate banking world before.
I was. Thrived on it.
Lots of stress.
Lots of stress. And I could prove it. I mean, I would prove to them that I can do this. No matter how hard you say it is, doesn't matter that I'm a woman. I'm going to do this. And so you just pile it on year after year. And I don't think that was the authentic me. I mean, I like to just be.
Yeah.
I like that.
So this program, we often have guests on who have turned their pain into purpose, and that's what you have done. You had this horrible experience, and you're helping others through your speaking, through your book, through your blog. Do you feel like you have found your purpose in life at this point?
Oh, well, yes, so much so. And it really helped me to see I found my purpose, and now I want to leave a legacy for my family, and just that was my passion. That was my mission, was to tell every woman I meet, you need to know this, and you need to know that I did it wrong, so you can learn from me.
Well, Susan, I'm sure that you have helped many women through your advocacy. You're doing a fabulous job educating women about the warning signs of heart attack. I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Sandy. I loved being here.
If you found today's show helpful, please share the information with someone who needs it, and follow Still Time for Joy for more practical tips on weathering life's storms, as well as inspiring stories of people who have turned their pain into purpose. Please consider supporting the work that goes into producing the show on Patreon. Follow Sandra Levine Productions on Facebook and YouTube, and learn more at sandralevine.com.